Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wyld. Today we are talking about gig workers exposed Shipt for squeezing pay and audited them. Gig Workers United? So recently I got an email from one of my subscribers. BC, thank you so much for emailing me about this and making this video possible. This time they sent me an article of how gig workers exposed Shipt through software that they developed, which I think is pretty cool. So with that said, we're going over everything that is being sent in this email and in this article, how it actually is for gig workers and their corresponding companies that they work with, and everything in between. But before we do that, let's go over a quick disclaimer. The content of this video does not contain, is never intended to be, legal, business, financial, tax, or health advice of any kind. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is advised that you conduct your own research and consult qualified professionals before applying anything you find online. Also, I want to be clear that everything that we're going to be going over is going to be market dependent, and what applies to me in my market may not apply to you. So with that said, let's get started. Very good article. It's interesting that the author mentions how algorithmic management is creeping onto other jobs while affecting white-collar workers. It's also interesting how it mentions multiple data points gig companies track on its workers without disclosure. I imagine it tracks hundreds, if not thousands, of these data points on its workers. Oh, it is a very good article. It is also very long and very extensive. So I'm going to leave the article in the description as usual, and I'm going to be playing a bit of hopscotch with the article to try to summarize it as effectively as I can without missing too many of the important details. In early 2020, gig workers for app-based delivery company Shipt noticed something strange about their paychecks, which had been acquired by Target in 2017 for US $550 million, offered same-day delivery from local stores. Previously, they'd known what to expect from their pay because Shipt had a formula. It gave workers a base pay of $5 per delivery plus 7.5% of the total amount of the customer's order through the app. But Shipt had changed their payment rules without alerting workers. When the company finally issued a press release about the change, it revealed only that the new pay algorithm paid workers based on effort, which included factors like the order amount, the estimated amount of time required for shopping, and the mileage driven. First off, let me take a note for a second on how cool it is that some people are starting to realize the overall shift into how it was versus how it is today. I was having a discussion earlier today, as of the recording of this video, about how Doordash was really good in the pandemic, and now it's not really that much, and people are starting to transition away from it. And second, it's funny because I saw a gig worker make a video recently about how most gig work content creators across all platforms talk very negatively about the platforms they work on, and she would like to see more positive content about gig work. While I hear what she is saying, and some can see that a few of her behaviors from previous videos about the content that she creates as something you would hear from a content creator in a said company's content creator program, this in itself reveals a hard truth. If no one is doing this kind of work and properly comparing notes, you are basically subject to accept blindly whatever comes your way. And I don't know if you noticed, staying positive is a great bumper sticker quote, but it is not a reason to let people who do the wrong thing get away with it over and over and over again. Like, imagine if we applied that logic to everything, right?
I can't believe those guys unalived my mother, but at least we could stay positive and know that she doesn't have to pay taxes anymore, so all is forgiven.
And that's a reason to let him off scot-free? What the hell is that?
That is a very extreme example, but it's still an accurate representation of how they operate and what they almost expect from us. Fighting back. The writer of this article also happens to be a data scientist. He even built a tool to audit Shipt to collect and analyze data, and with the combined help of Shipt shoppers that he was working with, a nonprofit workers advocacy group, and the MIT Media Lab, they have found a way to audit the gig company and shed light on the company's overall business model. Quick note for a second, is it not funny to anybody else that Tony Hsiu actually graduated from MIT and now that company is working to to counteract a lot of these gig companies and their shady behaviors. Companies whose business models rely on gig workers have an interest in keeping their algorithms opaque. This information asymmetry helps companies better control their workforces. They set the terms without divulging details, and workers' only choice is whether or not to accept those terms. The companies can, for example, vary pay structures from week to week, experimenting to find out essentially how little they can pay and still have workers accept the jobs. There's no technical reason why these algorithms need to be black boxes. The real reason is to maintain the power structure. This is why you have stupid terms instead of metrics. And let's use Doordash as an example for this because that's the company I'm most familiar with. The pay model is set on 3 factors: base pay, promo pay, and tips. Tips are straightforward. Promo pay, there's different types of. Then there's the breakdown of the base pay according to their website: time, distance, and desirability. There is not an explanation or a breakdown of how each of these are calculated. These are just blanket terms. Not to mention how we still get orders for like 10 miles for $2 with the lowest possible pay. Then they still claim that it's based on those factors. And don't even get me started on how they like to update the business model and just say the same things that they've always been saying.
We are now going to calculate based on distance and time for orders.
You're now gonna do that? Didn't you say that you were doing that already? Why would you say that you're doing it now when you were supposed to be doing that all this time? Is it because you're lying? Because you always have lied? Because you always will lie? That's what I thought. But we are very far off the beaten path for a video that is meant to simplify the purposes of an article. By October of 2020, we had received more than 5,600 screenshots from more than 200 gig workers. We paused our data collection to crunch the numbers. We found that 40% of workers were earning less under the new algorithm, with half of those workers receiving a pay cut of 10% or greater. What's more, looking at the data from all geographic regions, we found that about 1/3 of workers were earning less than their state's minimum wage. Now, this isn't the greatest sample size, but mass media has worked with less to make even less of a point, so take it for what it is. It wasn't a clear case of wage theft because 60% of gig workers were making about the same or slightly more under the new scheme. But we felt it was important to shine a light on those 40% of workers who had gotten an unannounced pay cut through a black box transition. I think the important part of this is the disparity of the two parties. Either you are being paid the exact same as if you were, or slightly more, slightly being the operative term, or you are being paid so much less to where it dips below the minimum wage. If you fall into the 40% group, by the way, you might need to either look for another gig or maybe consider a different path altogether because you are worth more than that. The article then goes on to say that despite the efforts of the software and motivated workers from all parties involved, they weren't able to determine as much as they wanted from the efforts that they put in, and unfortunately they told us everything we already knew, which are general ideas but not solid metrics. Soulless and his allies used the results to get media attention as they organized strikes, boycotts, and a protest at Shipt headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama, and Target's headquarters in Minneapolis. They asked for a meeting with Shipt executives, but they never got a direct response from the company. Its statements to the media were maddeningly vague, saying only that the new payment algorithm compensated workers based on the effort required for a job, and implying that workers had the upper hand because they could choose whether or not they want to accept an order. That is a bold statement claiming we have the upper hand. Yes, we can say no, but when you oversaturate a market, that upper hand no longer exists. Why assign orders to these intelligent gig workers when there are so many that have been claiming orders that just suck? The fact is, when you could control the market with people who could do the work for less, some would speculate speculate that those people don't have the proper citizenship or are not really all that bright, but that's really not the point. The point is that if this is the case, the control goes to one who has the abundance over who has scarcity. Who's willing to compromise on their own standards and who's willing to stick it out? Who is expecting the companies we work with to take care of them and who's looking for a way to take care of themselves? Sound familiar? I'm sure that people are gonna think I sound like a broken record, and this comes across as discrediting the work in which they are talking about, but the facts are the facts. Having a diversified gig portfolio and an exit strategy and treating the gig economy as an income bridge to what would be a long-term goal and not the goal is the most sustainable method of income earning in the gig economy. One of the very first lines in this article proves the difference in mindset. Workers could have quietly accepted their fate or sought employment elsewhere. Instead, they banded together, gathering data and forming partnerships with researchers and organizers to help them make sense of their pay data, which resulted in this. Did the protests and news coverage have an effect on worker conditions? We don't know, and that's disheartening. I'm not saying you can't fight for what you think is right on your end. I am saying it is best to find an alternative plan and not try to make the wrong people do the right thing. The less dependent you are on any one app or any one platform, the more success you're going to have in the gig economy. Either way, let me know what you guys think in the comments so we can have more perspectives on this subject. And if you guys would also like to email me about something happening in your market, my email is drivenwyld@gmail.com. Feel free to email me there. And who knows, maybe you get a shout out in a video as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.